Yep.
You have a responsibility to learn about the ways in which you are complicit so that you can address those blind spots. And so when we think about what does authentic solidarity actually require, it requires people to do that labor. It requires people to do the research around how am I showing up in a way that is causing harm to other people, and how do I interrupt that, right, at every moment? Because when I am perpetuating it, it is further dividing us. Because if we think about collective organizing historically, the Black Women's Health Project birthed out of the fact that Black women were in solidarity with white women. It's like first wave feminism, and they were like women rights, women health rights, whatever. And Black women are like, oh, you're not talking about me. You're still not talking about me in this conversation, in this politic. And we see Black maternal death rate is what it is, right? Like, they were like, no, we got to break off and do our own thing. We think about the Combahee River Collective, like all of these instances historically where Black people tried collective organizing and was like, oh, y'all not thinking about us. So let's go ahead and break off and have to do our own thing. And I think this is what McGhee gets at here is it prevents the masses from having collective awareness, humility, and accountability when we don't think cross-culturally and across lines of race and difference.
Yeah. I think it's obviously for some of us, as we see play out, in the public discourse, not always comfortable to talk about, racism because it's ugly. And I also would argue that I agree. It's not easy for me to think about how I have to and be constantly hyper aware of how I have to, show up in a space. I recently hosted a training at a university, and one of the things that I wanted to do with the participants was to really, show them how to have that metacognitive way of thinking about your thinking, and we did like a bias interruption activity where they essentially went through a 4-step process of like, thinking about like, what did I just say? And then asking yourself, is this thing that I just said, where is it coming from? Is it rooted in a thing that I heard before, from my upbringing or from something I heard on TV or from something I read? And then where does that idea come from? You need to be honest with yourself. When I think about the third step of this process, to like say like, yep, this is racist. And then you need to do the act of replacing it with truth. And so what is actually true about this thing that is rooted in an assumption or bias that I've internalized about, a particular group of people, and or what is the research or inquiry I need to do for myself so I can understand this thing as I identify that it is, in fact, an assumption that is rooted in racist ideology.
Yeah, and I also think it's like, I would love to assume the best of everybody, and it is like, a lot of people are intellectually lazy. Like, as we see literacy levels being what they are at, et cetera, that's like across lines of race and different. People are not functionally literate. It is more and more people are leaning to like AI, et cetera, all these things to solve their problems. And there are, over time, less critical in their thought to even engage in that level of metacognitive thinking that you named. And I just think like that is also a gap of like, people feel like, oh, that's so laborious to do, like all of that. But it's like, no, this actually matters, because when you all are in rooms making policy, when you all are in rooms voting on policy, it is going to be informed by the metacognitive thought you chose to not interrupt. And now this is materializing in divisiveness within our community. It is materializing in divisiveness amongst the masses, right? We think about a class struggle, right? Like, when we are not interrupting, it plays out not only in our interpersonal interactions, but ideological becomes material when we're not interrupting those ideological misconceptions. You have a